afternoon. This is Ifan from the Strategic Day Trader, and this is your market wrap for November 8th, 2019. Q's going to be relatively flat here coming into today. We had a neutral to bullish bias, unchanged here on the SPY as well. Looking to see if we get more of a pullback. We actually break the hourly uptrend that's still intact here. Pretty easy to see there on the Q's and SPY, right? Just moving from the bottom left to the upper right. That's just going to be our uptrend by definition there. Higher highs, higher lows, however you want to put it. Just continuing the uptrend. Going to still be bullish going into Monday. Same bias as today. If we break the uptrend, we'll go to more of a neutral bias. But right now, just bullish. All right. And then we're a couple setups away from a bearish bias. So not the most exciting stuff going on here on the Q's and SPY itself, but that's fine because we have plenty of earnings and gaps, and we'll still have plenty more next week. And so especially during these times where there's a lot of things to look at, right? I am been working with some traders, and the thing I've been hearing about is, there's a lot of setups. Sometimes I don't know which ones to take. And whether or not, they'll be good. And sometimes I think, traders can be a little bit hard on themselves because they just say, well, if it worked, I should have took it. And then if it didn't work, then I shouldn't have taken it. And, that kind of stuff you're always going to give yourself a hard time because we are in the business of speculating, right? We don't know. If there was a sure thing, then there really wouldn't be any reward. So with the risk comes the reward, right? And so what I'm working on with them to kind of make that process less fatiguing is to have a checklist in place. So a checklist that embodies what does your trade look like? Define what that trade is, okay? And so, for some people that might just be, what I've seen when I've talked to traders when I first start working them is that like, oh, well, I want to play the bullish stocks long and the short the bearish stocks, or things like that. And it's just, especially if it's that general, or I'm gonna buy the oversold and sell the overbought, or things like that, you're gonna give yourself a really hard time making the decision when it's time to make it, unless you have kind of well-defined criteria. Okay, so in the Turnaround Trader program, which is a link in the description, right, it gives you examples as well as writes them out exactly what we're looking for. Okay, the trader I was working with yesterday, we took a look at what his most profitable strategy was, and they were playing breakouts or breakdowns in the direction of the gap. So I said, okay, that's your from the results that we're looking at, you're making a killing on those. Let's define the ones that are working the best, and let's just focus on that. Okay, so you make a checklist. Okay, and we go through them with every trade, and then you say, okay, is this a trade I should take or not take? Okay, so the criteria that we came up with first was that, was it a gap? Is it gapping up or gapping down? If it's gapping up and you get a base, you want to play that long. If it's gapping down, you get a base, we're going to play that short. So first, we're playing in the direction of the gap. Do we get a base, right, that will allow us to do that? So first, is it gapping? Did it set up a base? And so what do we mean by a base, right? We want at least 5 bars in the same range, equal narrow range consolidation, okay? 5 or more, okay? Is it in the direction of the 20 MA? So is the 20 MA coming up, pointing up, telling us that average price is also supporting the trend that we're going after? Okay, and then is there reward to risk? Is there target? Okay, so those are just the 4 things. It's one of the strategies covered in the Turnaround Trader program. We chose to focus on that because he was doing really well with it. It seemed like he was natural at it. So, right, we focus on that. We always want to augment our strengths, right? So let's just take those 4 criteria, and we're going to go through some of the things that we saw from today, okay? So starting with this SIEN, okay? If you come to the SIEN and you look at it and you say, should I play this? Should I play this long? Okay, I'm looking at it in the afternoon. should I play this long? Is it a gap? It is a gap. Do we have a 20 MA coming up supporting price pointing in the same direction as our play? We do. Do we have 5 or more? We have whatever, 20 here. I don't know how many bars of consolidation we have here before it breaks out over that topping tail, right? And then do we have reward to risk? Reward's going to come from the daily. We did talk about this trade. 915 to 920 is what we're looking at here into this daily resistance, okay? So there is reward to risk. So 4 out of 4 on the SIEN. 20 MA catches up, breaks out over that, and there you go. Where did it get to? 927. Okay, so reward to risk, that was over a couple R's there if you played it and you were either took it all there, took some there, you could have trailed some out, right? Hard to lose money on this breakout. Okay, so there we go. You look at the 4 criteria and you say, okay, all of them match up. I should play it. If it works, right, then I just keep doing what I'm doing. If it doesn't work and I see that there are adjustments that need to be made or criteria that needs to be added, right, then that can be done. All right, so let's take a look at another one. All right, the ETM here, okay. Was this a gap up? It sure was. Do we have 5 or more bars of consolidation here? We sure do. We have it here as well. All right, is the 20 MA pointing up in support of our play in continuation of the trend? It sure is. Okay, this one actually was given by put out by someone in the room right before it triggered, which is phenomenal that you know, that room members are just putting out some of the really nice plays these days and just picking up on the methodology. Really shows that, you know, the time that we put in to go over the plays when we're on the mic, you know, people are just making it happen and figuring out, you know, that they can do it on their own. So really nice mention there on the ETM. But again, you come to this play, you run through the criteria. Is it a gap up? Is it a base? Okay, is the 20 MA pointing up? Is there reward to risk? This is a very, very tight stop here, right? Target 1 high of the day. It sure is. So again, kind of 4 out of 4, okay? Now, that doesn't mean there aren't going to be plays that either don't reach all the criteria or that reach all the criteria that don't work, right? It's that we are trying to be specific, and then if you see there are other things that we can take advantage of, then that becomes the development of a new play, right? And so if you've done the Turnaround Trader program, you know that there is 4 strategies outlined and 2 entry patterns as well as variations of those entry patterns, right, outlined in the program. So it's not just the one thing, but like I said, the reason that we focus on this is because he was doing so well with it. I was saying, you know, this one, you know, you've got it down. If you were going to teach someone how to take these plays that you're doing so well on, you know, this is your kind of play. How would you describe it? How would you teach it, right? And so once you start to think of it that way, right, then you're going to experience a little bit less decision fatigue. Now, let's say you come across this one, okay, and you say, well, I think this is going to break out higher. Okay, you're thinking, this is gonna break out, and you go through and you say, well, is this a gap up? It's not. It is a gap, but we're not playing in the direction of the gap. And you say, okay, is the 20 MA pointing up? It's pretty flat here. Okay, so those 2 so far doesn't really work. Okay, what about reward to risk? Yes, it's gonna work. Do we have the sort of tight bars here, consolidation? We do. So we got a couple things here that maybe make this playable as a breakout. Okay, so if you say, well, I'm going to pass on it because it's not quite exactly perfect for what I'm looking to do, and then this goes, right? The point is, if you didn't have that decision-making process in place, you would be like, oh, of course, I knew it. You know, this is my, you know, you're telling yourself, this is my play, I'm never going to let this go again, right? Versus when you have that checklist in place, when you know what the trades look like, and say you see this, and you see this happen multiple times, then you say, okay, now we start to design a play for this. Okay, maybe I go after something that has gotten a huge sell-off at the open and starts to break above the 20 MA, and the 20 MA flattens out, and that's when I want to play a breakout. This becomes a new type of play. Okay, let's take a look at this one as well. So what's the problem with this one, right? Again, right, it's actually 20 MA is pointing down. This was a gap down, right? But you see this little bit of a breakout here, and you say, okay, can I play this? Maybe not with the criteria that you had before, not necessarily with the same setup and entry that you did for the SIEN and the ETM, but maybe you're noticing, okay, maybe there's something else for me to be going after here. Okay, let's take a look at this one. I thought this was a good, interesting example too. Let's say you're looking to play the Disney, okay, and you're like, okay, we finally get a base here, right? We start to get some consolidation. Should I play as it breaks over the consolidation? Okay, should I play this as it's breaking out there? And so you go through your criteria. Is it a gap up? It sure is. Disney gapped up, had their earnings, and made their announcement about Amazon carrying Disney Plus and whatever. Market thought it was bullish. Still going to close up here, probably close to 3.75%. And so you're looking at this base. Should I play this base? We do have a gap up. Is there nice tight bars? Is there consolidation? Yes. Okay, so far 2 out of 2. Is the 20 MA pointing in the direction of our play? It isn't anymore, especially by the time you get a break over these this consolidation. It's actually starting to point down because it's actually caught up to the price, the selling from the morning, telling you actually this isn't a severe downtrend. That's what that pointing down. You can even use a faster MA. You can use an 8 or a 10, whatever. Also, that will actually react to the opening price even faster, right, in the 20. Okay, and so you're saying, oh, there's a problem there. Okay, what about reward to risk? Where is resistance? And we see all this intraday resistance here ahead of 139. So you know what? Let's probably should not be playing this breakout because there are problems, right? So it's also going to keep you out of these kind of plays, right? And again, here it's trying to transition, gave you a breakout, and you may say, well, what about this one, right? And then you have to say, well, if I create a play that allows me to be in this run-up, is there a way that I can be in this run-up without having to be wrong multiple times as this continues to go down before it finally bottoms? Because that's going to be really important. You may say, it looks so obvious in hindsight that this thing ran up like this. But are you going to be able to stay out of that failure there and this new breakdown there and this attempt to pop, right? Because if you're wrong 2-3 times, right, you're going to need a pretty big play to even get back to break even on this symbol today. Okay, so we just looked at some 5-minute bases here, all right, as examples, okay, to help you kind of think about what should my trade look like, what should the criteria be, and that's kind of gonna help. And that's gonna help because what the struggle is, I think, for a lot of traders, they're like, oh, I get it, I see why this should be played long, right? But I don't really know how well they work, or should I really be committed to it? Is it going to get far enough? Is this my kind of play? Is this a good play, right? Even though you think, oh yeah, basing at the highs should be higher, right? So especially when you track and you see the results that, yeah, you're doing really well playing these bases in the direction of the gap, and that's your most profitable strategy, that's when you say, okay, now this is going to be my trade. I'm going to make this an integral part of my trading, right? And so that'll help with some of the decision fatigue, because we see all types of setups, all sorts of cases to be made about why something should be long or short, right? I saw this base right here, right, was basing here at the lows. Now if we went through the criteria, right, for this trader as far as playing this breakout off the lows, is this 20 MA pointing up? No. Is it a gap? No. Right? Is there reward to risk? Maybe. I think there's a good amount of retracement that can be had there, right? So again, this doesn't really meet all the criteria, and so you can see something like this kind of breakout that triggers right there. That trader at least shouldn't be playing. Okay. All right. So we went over this 4 criteria because I thought it was a good starting point as you're trying to design a play, as you're trying to define what is my trade going to look like, what are the criteria that I need. And then they can always be iterated upon, whether you're coming up with new ways, new strategies that you see that are working really well in the current environment, or, right, you think, oh yeah, actually, let's better define how this play should work. I don't want it extended away from the 20 MA, for instance, and that can be added to it. I want it above the VWAP if I'm playing long, for instance, right? If it's basing at the VWAP and then breaks above it, right, that's pretty good, or basing right above it and then breaks out, right? So you can continue to make those strategies even more accurate and more specific, right? Detail is what's important. That detail will help reduce the kind of paralysis that you get from looking at all these plays and not feeling like you know which ones you should play, which ones you shouldn't play. Of course, no one knows for sure which ones are going to work, right? But your best way of going about it, increasing that accuracy, is doing it step by step. Figure out what you're best at, and then starting to perfect that strategy while developing the other ones that you're noticing as well. All right. So hopefully that gives you some ideas on kind of what the thought process should be when you're ready to take a play. If you want to write them down, you have a checklist in front of you for every trade. I think that's a really good idea. Okay, so these were just some examples from today. Showed you some that didn't meet all the criteria but actually worked. Some that didn't meet all the criteria that failed, and some that met all the criteria and worked just like you would expect them to. Okay, so that's gonna do it for today's market wrap. All right, hope you had a good week. All right, there'll be plenty of trading still left, I think, in the coming weeks, but hopefully you're taking advantage of all the opportunities that we've been getting these last couple of weeks. All right, so hope you had a nice week. Hope you have a nice weekend, and I will talk to you on Monday.